They said it was healing. It was a cover-up. I was 16 when Micah showed up at our church. At the time, I was still recovering from my dad's death, and my grief was the first thing he noticed. He told me he was sorry for my loss and asked if I wanted to help lead the youth nights, saying this is what my dad would have wanted. I cried after our first one-on-one. Not because I was hurt, but because someone finally said I mattered. At first, Micah felt like therapy. He prayed with me, asked deep questions. He said God gave him insight, but then he asked for my number, and once he got it, he started texting me every night. At first, it was just encouragement and words of strength, but then came the compliments about my outfit, my legs. Before I knew it, he calling me at 2 a.m. because he couldn't sleep without hearing my voice. When we did see each other, he became a little more handsy. He never touched me in a way I could clearly call wrong, but the hugs lasted longer, drifting lower. The first time it went below my lower back, he told me, God's love is intimate. What we have is special. I finally worked up the courage to tell a close friend what was going on, but she said I was exaggerating, that Micah loved everyone like that. So I told someone else, our associate pastor. He looked heartbroken, then said, we'll address this privately. Please don't talk to others. It would only cause division. Micah disappeared from the stage a week later. No explanation, just a new youth leader and a sermon on trials sent by the enemy. That same day, the pastor gave me a folded letter and said, this is a healing step between you, Micah, and God. It was an agreement of things I should reflect on, things like guarding my heart and not leading others into temptation. I signed it. I was 16. I didn't want to be a burden. The silence ate at me for years. I stayed in that church until I graduated, watched new girls get close to new leaders. I kept my head down, convinced myself I was the problem. Then 2 years later, a friend who'd moved to another state sent me a group photo. Look who's running the youth retreat this weekend. It was Micah, smiling, holding a Bible, surrounded by teenagers. I threw up. I hadn't said his name out loud in 2 years. The next week, I asked my therapist if I had any options. She helped me connect with a civil attorney who handled church abuse cases. He asked if I had any messages. I still had some emails, a few journal entries, but he said the most powerful thing would be witnesses. So I reached out to girls from my old youth group. Not all responded. One told me to stop stirring things up, but another, Rachel, did. She said she'd always wondered why I left. She thought she'd imagined the way Micah would single her out too. She'd been too scared to say anything. We talked for hours, compared stories. He'd called her his prayer partner too, told her to keep their meeting secret, even used the same phrases. Together, we found a third girl. She had a different story, but the same ending. We met with the lawyer and compiled everything we had, emails, timelines, texts. The lawyer privately contacted the church where Micah now worked. At first, they ignored it. Then he sent over the binder. Less than a week later, Micah was gone from their staff page. No announcement, just like before. Then the letter came. A single envelope at my job. No return address. Inside was a printed screenshot of a journal entry I had written in high school about Micah. On the back was a note written in thick Sharpie. You really haven't learned when to shut your mouth. I panicked. I told Rachel and Kayla. They were scared too. Kayla had gotten a phone call with no caller ID, but no one spoke. There was just breathing. We filed a restraining order against Micah, but of course it didn't go through. There wasn't enough proof. But the lawyer said we had grounds for a civil case, either with emotional distress, abuse of power, and unlawful behavior by a spiritual authority. It wouldn't put him in jail, but it could make sure he couldn't just slide into another church again. Micah's lawyer tried to negotiate, offered a financial settlement and a non-disclosure agreement. We said no. During the deposition, he didn't apologize. He smirked. Said we were all just needy girls who got attached. That's when Rachel snapped. She gave our lawyer a screenshot of his Facebook DM to her from 3 weeks earlier. Let's talk privately. I think we could work something out. He was obviously threatening her with a bribe. Micah's own attorney ended the session early. Eventually, the court ordered Micah to step away from any ministry or faith-based leadership indefinitely. He was also required to remove himself from youth spaces, camps, and any spiritual teaching platforms. His name wouldn't be listed in any formal registry, but his reach was cut off. I moved away, got a new job, started volunteering at a support group for survivors of spiritual coercion. I thought my life was just getting back to normal, when a few nights ago, I got an email from a girl I didn't know. The subject line just said, he's back. He's going by a new name now. I think he's after my little sister. Full story linked below.